Hi, everyone. If you're just joining us, we're just waiting for some folks to jump on. Probably give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Kelly, I love the interactive background.
Most people comment on that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I've got another one, but it's too nerdy.
Nerdy. I'm curious now.
Give me a second.
All right, people are rolling in now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'll get started just out of respect for your time, and thank you for being here. So today we have a number of items to talk about. You all received an email from me last week. Kelly, you're right, it's a little nerdy, but it's pretty cool. I like the background. So anyways, sorry, thank you for being here. You should have received an email from me yesterday. For those of you who have virtual events, we reached out and let you know that those were approved. Right now, we're just kind of waiting on that funding piece to see what happens with those in-person events, depending on whether or not the city is able to promote or sponsor them. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. Oops. So for the agenda today, we'll talk about the COVID-19 changes. We're going to talk about sponsorship funding and how that might pivot, as well as what the slate of events is that we had for 2021, and then how we're going to be doing some outreach later on, or early in the first week of September. So just before we get started, I'd like to start out with an acknowledgement of place. We would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land known as Bend, Oregon, north to the Columbia River, is the original homelands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The Confederated Tribes ceded this land in the Treaty of 1855 while retaining regular and customary hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. The Wanalama and Wasco and Northern Paiute people inhabited this area in certain seasonal times that clearly established their presence. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. This trade route expanded the impact of commerce between tribal nations. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land, and it is our hope that guests continue to honor and take care for this land. So just before we dive in, there are some quick catch-up items that we wanted to share with you all. When we had our first planning meeting, we had asked how we should do application review this year. And a lot of you had been in favor of I3 helping us out, or another third party. This year, I3 wasn't able to help us out. So Shelly, Joshua, and I all worked together with the City of Bend's Internal Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Accessibility Task Force. There's a few members of that task force that reviewed all of the applications. We got great feedback from them. They're very excited for all of the events that you'd proposed, and just really grateful for all the work that you're doing in the community. We do have an updated timeline based on just everything that's been happening in the last weeks or a few weeks. And so today, August 19th, obviously we are here meeting. This meeting is specific to event hosts. So those of you who have applied to host events during Welcoming Week. As of tomorrow, Friday, August 20th, we're asking that if you did have a proposal for an in-person event or a hybrid event, that you answer some of those questions that we had put out and give us a response on whether or not you think that it could be moved to virtual and how that would impact funding. And then next week, what we're going to be doing is sending out those sponsorship letters, letting you know how much funding will be received for your event. And then what we need from you is for those sponsorship letters to be signed and returned to us by the end of the week too. So if you could be keeping an eye out on that, that's going to allow us to release the funding faster for you. And then as of September 1, that is when we're hoping to have all of the events solidified so that we can begin the city outreach. City Council does have a proclamation scheduled for Wednesday, September 1st at their council meeting. And they, oh, sorry, go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to share that the letters will be sent via email. So they're not going to be going through the mail. They'll be coming to each of your inboxes as a formal letter attached. Thanks.
Good clarification. So yeah, September 1 we'll begin our outreach, and then the funding distribution will start at that point. So let's talk about this. I learned this week that because of the rising number of COVID-19 cases in Deschutes County, the city will not be able to host Welcoming Week events, or sorry, I said that really wrong, host city hosted events. And so for our own public meetings and other like open houses and things that the city is running, we're not able to do those in person anymore. Right now, our leadership team and council is still discussing whether or not we will be able to promote or fund in-person events, including outdoor events for Welcoming Week. We really haven't gotten a response on what route that's going to take yet, but we're hoping that by tomorrow we will know so that we can move forward however that might be. So I just want to open it up, and if any of you have questions or anything that I can do to answer comments, we'd just love to hear from you. That helps in decision making at the leadership level. So feel free to unmute yourself. This is really informal.
Hi, Michaela. This is Milagros from Latino Community Association. The question I have, so is this just a for sure thing that everything is getting canceled, or we're waiting for another announcement?
Yeah.
Is there any hope for any in-person events?
Yeah, at this point, oh, go ahead, Joshua. He probably has the latest information.
Yeah. Hi, Milagros. Good to hear from you. So right now we know that we're not doing in-person events. I think the question is how does that apply if there are events like Welcoming Week events where the city's like sponsoring it or providing funding or promoting it? So that's what we're trying to get clarification on. But my personal suggestion to folks is to try to plan for virtual if you're able to, just because who knows what could change. I mean, I think that's the reality of what COVID has shown us over the last few months, and going back to wearing masks and indoors and those sorts of things is it's kind of dynamic, and we recognize it takes a lot of time and energy to plan these events. And so it's probably safest to plan for virtual just to ensure that you can get city support and that your event won't need to be canceled or anything. But I think we're starting to see some larger events have tighter restrictions. So like Michaela said, there's no definitive answer on whether or not we won't be able to fund in-person events or promote in-person events. But I do feel like it's probably safer to plan for virtual for that reason until we get some clarity.
Thanks, Joshua. Is there anyone else that has questions about how we're moving forward?
Hey, Michaela, it's Shelley. One of the things that I think some of our community partners have mentioned that they'd like to do in both their applications and just talking with them is some type of pickup point. So because it's not a gathering, an official event, I'm wondering if that would still, our new requirements would still apply to, let's say, picking up food or snacks, or I'm wondering about the fathers group and backpacks. So I guess I'm just wanting, maybe Joshua can jump in there too, around clarification around if pickup points during a period of time where there's maybe just a one-on-one interaction with mask wearing, if that would be supported by the Welcoming Week activities.
Yeah, that's a good question, Shelley. I will add that to the list of sort of different variations of in-person that we need to kind of make decisions on.
Derek.
Yeah, hey, so we're kind of, we appreciate the city's work on this and needing to pivot. I mean, we certainly understand as a transit agency with rising cases, getting people together in person is not a good thing right now. So I just wanted to get maybe a little feedback from the group. I'm trying to think of how, ideally we wanted to do an outdoor event with some kind of personalized trip planning and doing some kind of interactive surveys, but doing that virtually is challenging, because everybody kind of has individual trip needs, right? And it wouldn't be for the benefit of the group to kind of go over each person's plan while others kind of sit and listen. So is there a way we could do something virtually that would give, providing an overview of our system and how it connects to certain places kind of in a more generic format, or, because I'm kind of on the fence of, is this going to be attractive to people? Would it be worth doing something virtually, or would we just maybe want to cancel and try to do something later in the fall that kind of gets at the same outcomes? And maybe it's not a part of Welcoming Week, but we could still do something, and involve members of this group and have it be a little more interactive and in person when we're allowed to do that. That's kind of my fundamental question to the group.
Sure. And thanks for that, Derek. I know it's hard because with an event like yours, it was celebrating the grand opening of the the bus, the new Hawthorne station, and so that's definitely changing maybe the intent of your event. So I mean, if anybody else has ideas on how that could happen, feel free to speak up or reach out to Derek later.
I wanted to share, hi everybody, Joanne with Interfaith Movement for Immigrant Justice. We are seeing the Delta variant really take off and be the predominant variant in urban areas. And, Central Oregon, with all the visitors we have, can be in a very tight position. So looking forward to September, 2 things that we will need are testing and vaccination. So if you can incorporate testing and vaccination into your in-person event, I think that you will have a really good chance of having something in person. And so that's what I wanted to put out there. Also, that requires volunteers because there is a strain in testing and vaccination because there's a shortage of nurses. So thinking of how can we pair up our Welcoming Week to COVID response and education, I think it's a wise move for all of us and for the community.
Thanks, Joanne. Yeah, I know that we do have some St. Charles folks who had applied for an event and they weren't able to make it today because they are just overrun at the hospital, and it's kind of all hands on deck right now. So being aware of that and what Joanne said about incorporating maybe some or pivoting to do outreach, education, vaccinations, those are very important right now. Melissa.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Melissa Kamanya here with the Human Rights and Equity Commission. In my professional realm, I work with the Health Authority and Deschutes County Health. And so if there is an organization that's interested in a vaccination event, I'm going to put my email in the chat if I have permission to do that, because I have access to the folks and some of the funding to make that happen.
Wait a minute. So now I'm hearing, this is Milagros again with LCA. In all of our events, we had already scheduled a vaccination clinic. So you're saying that if we do have a vaccination, the opportunity for vaccines, are we allowed to have it in person? And then the city of Bend will then sponsor the event?
I think that that is another question for types of events that the city could or may sponsor that Joshua can bring to the leadership team later on. Right now, it's kind of a question mark.
Okay, just wanted to reiterate, we already had all that scheduled, and vaccination was happening in all of our events. So my preference is in person, and I have not canceled with anybody, either the vendor, food vendor, or the vaccination team. But if we're putting this in a vote, my preference is in person, and yes, I will have vaccination as I had that planned.
And Milagros, are you representing LCA?
Yes.
So just for the group, LCA is also part of that network that's working with the Health Authority and the Health Department. So they have that system accessible outside of the City of Bend resources too.
Okay. So now that, oh, go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I just had a question for Melissa. So Melissa, we've been trying to work through Mosaic to get a pop-up vaccination clinic. They've been telling us they didn't have the staff resources. I'm on a bi-weekly call with Dr. Conway. He had originally suggested to our transit committee the idea, or we had proposed the idea of doing a vaccination clinic. So is that something that you could maybe help us out with? Because we were kind of had a dead end with Mosaic, but it sounds like, you guys might have some resources at Deschutes County. And if we could pivot to do some kind of, I don't want to do a vaccination event while everybody else is doing it, but maybe it's an idea that we could have once the city, gets a little more information on if we can still do in person with the vaccine event, because we would love to get more of our transit riders vaccinated, more of our staff vaccinated. So this could be an opportunity for us. But maybe if you could shoot me your email in a chat or something, we could follow up.
Yeah, I was looking for the chat option here and I don't see it. But my email address, just for anyone who wants to talk offline about vaccination events or any of the things, you can reach me at covid@brhabitat.org. That's brhabitat.org. Or you can go on our website and find my personal email link there too.
And Emily, I see your hand is up. Derek, Emily's with Mosaic, so she might be able to give you some more answers. Oh, Emily, we can't hear you. I believe she has to switch her speakers around. So just a second.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I had to just switch my speakers around. Yeah, if you want to email me, Derek, I can give you my email right now. It's Emily, EMILY, .Boynton @mosaicmedical.org. And I'm working with our outreach staff. We are really overwhelmed right now, our operations staff giving out vaccines. We do have all of our clinics giving out vaccines right now, and you can go on our website to arrange for an appointment, but we are doing pop-up events with our mobile clinic. Up in Madras for the next couple weeks, but we may have availability with our mobile clinic another time. And that's the best way to, we worked with LCA and we worked with other organizations like that through our mobile clinic in particular.
Okay, thanks, Emily. That's helpful.
Great. So as we're thinking about how our events could change to virtual and waiting on answers from the city, how is this going to impact funding? So I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but sponsorship letters are set to be sent next week. Once we understand better what those in-person events are going to do. And as you know, in-person events usually involve an event venue and food and some costs that virtual events just don't have. And so we were anticipating some changes in those in-person event funding requests, and that's going to determine how much funding we can give to each of the events. So we're waiting on a few more answers for that. What I do want to ask of all of you is that if you're requesting funding and you need the funding in order to hold your event or prepare for your event, let us know so that we can make sure that we're expediting that request to the best of our ability, because you know, sometimes you can plan it all and do it, and then we'll send the funding and you might get it after the event. So we really do need to know if you need that prior to your event taking place. So let's talk about the fun stuff. What events do we have slated for this year? This slide that's in front of you has all of the applications that we currently have. As you can see, there's still some missing information in these applications that we're hoping to have more clarity on. So if you're on and you have updated info for me, feel free to just unmute yourself and let us know. I know, Joanne, you had said that for the IMIRJ events, you were thinking about a different time or date for doing those. So like I said, if you have updated info, just let me know. The ones that are not calendared, Welcoming Week Health Fair, that was with Mosaic Partners in Care and Volunteers in Medicine. You had 2 dates listed that you could do that. And then Back to School Backpack Distribution and Welcoming Beyond This Week with Ben Lapine School District.
This is Sherry from Embrace Bend. I believe we wanted that time slot for Monday at 5 p.m.
Oops. I'm not going to be able to make edits, so I'm taking notes on my other screen. So Monday, 5 p.m., and that's the Embrace Bend event. Thank you.
So Michaela, this is Dalton Miller-Jones with Restorative Justice and Healing. We are by tomorrow going to make whatever revisions we need to go virtual. We've done virtual workshops and presentations, so we will punt to that format. We may not be able to do the 2, 4, and 6 p.m. sessions as originally planned, but those changes we will send to you as soon as we finish. We're right now doing trainings all day today and tomorrow. So we will try to get everything updated, but we do plan to go ahead virtually.
Thank you for that, Don. Milagros, did you have a time for the Welcoming Week kickoff by chance? I know we've typically done it in the evening.
Yeah, time frame 5 to 8 p.m. Narrowing down maybe 6 to 8, but 5 to 8, it's good because we were planning to do our grand opening of our new office as well on that event. So it is crucial if it's in person for us.
Okay. Let's see, and I don't know if Denise is on here today. Denise Holly, have you joined us? Okay, sounds good. So essentially this is what we're looking at for the week. I have open dates and times on the bottom right of the screen. That's times that we do not have any events scheduled at this time. Go ahead, Derek.
Oh, sorry for all the questions. I was just curious if for those that are pivoting to a virtual event, are there considerations that need to be made for, Spanish or kind of closed captioning for people with disabilities, like in a virtual format to have a welcoming platform? What are the recommendations from the city in terms of, what we need to do with our Zoom accounts or our virtual platforms to make them more accessible or easier, for people who don't speak
Sure.
as a first language to participate?
Yeah, thank you, Derek, for that question. I appreciate it. And I think that we do have some best practices put together for virtual events. One of those being to make sure that we're using a Zoom or some sort of platform that allows folks to join in a webinar type format. So last year we had some events on Facebook Live, and it was just hard for people who didn't have Facebook to attend those events. But now Zoom usually has options where you can stream on Facebook Live, you can have Zoom going, you can have YouTube going. So looking at the options for live streaming and making sure that your event is accessible in that form. And then Shelley, and sorry to put you on the spot, I know you have talked about simulcast before when we have ASL or Spanish interpreters on these events. So if you have any, suggestions that you could share, that'd be great.
Sure. So for the Human Rights and Equity Commission, for the City of Bend, we have both ASL and a Spanish channel. So I think it's possible on Zoom. It depends on what account level you have. But I think that's that would be a great event sponsorship request from the city to be able to offer that. It does come at a cost. And so if you are thinking about pivoting to a virtual event, I would highly recommend that you look at adding that as an option and asking the city for funds to support that.
Thanks, Shelley. And then go ahead, Dalton.
Just on the times that are available, I don't know the distinction between all day and daytime.
Yeah, that's just my language. So all day is there is not a single event planned for that day. Daytime means that there's evening programs slated. So anything before 5 would be good. Thank you. Okay. Kelly.
Yeah, and for the fathers group, I see that we're not calendared. Our biggest thing is that how do we distribute when we're not allowed to commingle, so to speak? We're kind of stuck. And the last thing the fathers group would want to do is have the appearance of not being a compliant with an order. So we'll be talking about that. I think we're really waiting for tomorrow, right? To find out what we can and can't do. And if the city can't sponsor us, that would be a difficult. You can't do virtual backpack giveaway unless we find some way of getting kids to communicate with us and how to get them to them. And that's a whole nother distribution issue. Yeah. So we're kind of stuck.
Definitely understand. And I do apologize for having to play the waiting game.
Well, it's not you. It's just the nature that we're in. It's the beast of a pandemic. So, how do you protect people? So,
yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Jasmine.
Yeah, forgive my ignorance here, but I am looking at the calendar. I'm wondering, where is the advocacy event? Is it described as something different?
Yeah, so it is
Sunday. I see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay. So if there's no more comments on at least this slide, let's move on to what happens when we get to that outreach phase. So the goal is that by the end of next week, all of the events are pretty much solidified. Small details can change, but dates, times, event types, that should all be pretty much well ready to distribute in communications. And so for the city, what we do is we wait typically for the proclamation to be made by City Council before we begin our outreach. I said earlier, that is scheduled for the council meeting at 7 p.m. on September 1st. And Brad Porterfield is going to be in attendance to receive that proclamation from council. At that point, the city does send out a press release letting people know that we have declared Welcoming Week September 10th through 19th. With that, we want to have all of our online communications ready to go. So that means our webpage will have all of the new summary of events for 2021. We typically create a form in both English and Spanish that lists all of the events. In addition, we add the events to our Welcoming Week web pages in English and Spanish. We add them to the city events calendar. This year, Welcoming America, which is the I guess parent of Welcoming Week, has a new map feature. So I will go on and add all of your events to their map too. So if someone hears about Welcoming Week and doesn't know where to look at the city, they can find all of the events that are near them by going directly to Welcoming America. Our proclamation, September 1st, as I said, the press release goes out shortly after. We create Facebook events for each event. And then we also tag you as co-hosts. So we can, I guess, share that event. We won't have duplicate events going out on the social media platforms. I think there's also an opportunity for me to add those to Nextdoor this year. So I'm looking into being able to do that. And then we share all of the events on our social media and other communications channels. So the city has an Instagram, our webpage, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as LinkedIn and all of the social channels. We put that into our communications plan to do outreach on. So with that outreach, we do just have a couple of asks. You're welcome as community partners to do your own outreach, however you want that to be. There's just a couple of things that we wanted to be clear about. So please don't create duplicate Facebook events. I kind of explained that that's already, it's a best practice that we have one event and that both of us are tagged on that. And then please let the city send out our press release first before sending out other press releases. And this just helps us message Welcoming Week before our individual partners go out and highlight their specific events. And then when possible, please direct everyone to our Welcoming Week web pages. It's bendoregon.gov/welcoming week or bendoregon.gov/bienvenido. And then just so that you can stay up to date on when the city sends out those press releases and begins our communications and outreach, you can stay signed up for the Bend Current and news releases using bendoregon.gov/enews. Okay, so now I want to just open it up again for any further questions that you have. At this time, we don't really have much more information, but we'll take notes of your comments and see how that can help us as we make decisions moving forward. Jasmine.
Hey, I am wondering for the Human Rights and Equity Commission, we have no personal branding at this time. So, which is perfectly fine with me. I'm just concerned, or better yet, is there if we're partnered together on this advocacy day thing, is there another entity who we can like piggyback off of that's separate from the city?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the IMIRJ is going to be hosting that event along with HREC.
Okay, I'm sorry, what's the acronym for?
Yeah, thanks. And Joanne, you can speak to that. It's the immigrant, and I'm sorry, I can't find it. Just one second.
It's the Interfaith
Thank
Movement for Immigrant Justice.
you. Thank you.
Okay, so do they have all of this existing branding?
Sure. Shelley, I'm not sure what the conversations have been with that group. So do you know who's taking lead?
Actually, I think Joshua and Joanne are working on.
Oh, that's right.
Advocacy Day.
Yeah, I'm working with Joanne on that. So just as a clarification, Jasmine, like the city sends out these events as like a collective, like here are all the welcoming week events. And then if individual organizations want to promote those in addition to the city promotion and advertising, they're welcome to do that. But it's up to those individual event organizers. I don't know if Joanne has any plans to do additional outreach. I know she does a lot of sort of one-on-one connecting with the community to get folks to that event, and especially for that event since it's targeted for our immigrant and refugee community. And so Joanne would be able to provide more details on that.
Okay, that sounds good. So ultimately I would just be ultimately pretty protective of the HRAC and what they're putting out at this time when we haven't done a lot of developing work with our messaging or anything else. So I would like, it sounds like there's this pathway where we can just depend on the city to communicate for us and not have to feel rushed for any like standalone communication.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Joshua. Okay. Is there any other questions before I let you get going?
Do you have a time frame of when we will know for sure if it's virtual or in person?
Sure. Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I guess it's Joshua again. I have a meeting with some city leadership. It's tomorrow afternoon. And so I'm hoping by like the end of the day tomorrow, I will have a better sense of what the specific guidelines are for in-person events.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Derek.
Yeah, I was curious when kind of do we have the vaccination events on the calendar? Are those part of another event? I guess those planned, because if we aren't able to do it, I'd like to at least promote it to our transit riders where they could get some vaccines if needed. So is that kind of shored up on the calendar, or is that part of another event?
So Milagros mentioned that it would be included in their events. Those are the only ones that I know of at this time.
Yeah, so the two events that we were planning was September 10th, which was the grand opening of our office and the welcoming week kickoff. And another date we were working on and already had vaccination was for September 16th in conjunction with young professionals. No, I still want to push the in-person because otherwise we can't have the vaccination, and it's crucial for those two events in person because otherwise our Hispanic community will not respond as great as virtual as they will in person.
Sure.
So that I'm struggling with that because I know I will not have a great attendance if it's virtual.
Yeah. Jasmine, did you have another question?
I didn't, but now I have a comment.
Okay.
I know I understand from what I feel a little bit late to the game, but obviously we're talking about the city sponsoring and continuing to financially support specific events, which is something that a decision will be made later today or tomorrow, if I'm understanding that correctly, about these events. But we have the Fathers Group basically running into the issue of their backpack drops, and then we have this kind of vaccine outreach to the Hispanic community. And so my comment would just be that like that when you're coming into a discussion of access and equitability for both two vulnerable populations, like I mean, I'm sure you guys are weighing all of these things, but it doesn't logically make sense from an equity perspective to not let these events continue in person with the support of the city. So I'm just gonna like say that basically as the chair. of the Human Rights and Equity Commission. And that hopefully those comments can be passed on to our leadership and decision makers around that.
Jasmine, I took some notes, so I will definitely share that with the group.
We all have our fingers crossed.
Just as a comment, this is Milagros again with LCA. Just as a comment, we've been doing in-person events with social distancing, with all the measurements, and with masks. This past weekend we hosted the Mexican consulate in Redmond. We had about 500 individuals in Saturday and Sunday, with all the sanitation procedures, and we also had COVID testing, COVID vaccines, and I feel like we can put an event together, especially following all the requirements inside or outside. We've been doing also vaccination events where about 200 people are together. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm familiar with the events. I'm struggling to go virtual because we tried so hard for our community to come forward and get vaccinated, and that tool it's been taken away.
Sure. Thank you, Milagros. Okay. Well, with that, you can always reach out to us if you have additional questions. We're happy to help. Thank you so much for hanging in there with us as we navigate the ever-changing waters of COVID-19. We just appreciate everything you guys are doing out there in the community, and want to support that in what ways we can. So like I said, fingers crossed, and you will be hearing from us more in the next couple of days. Okay. Have a great day.
Thank you, Michaela and Joshua.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Much. Have a great day.